Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Anonymous. And here's her story. Hey, Ollie, there are two great things I've learned from your channel. The first is for listening for projection. It has helped me greatly in figuring out the characters of those around me. Just recently, I think I uncovered a covert narc at work, listening to her projection in subtle ways. I wasn't the only one who noticed or complained, and she got fired. Secondly, listening to recordings has really helped me see my own situations in a clearer light. I really love your channel and think you're doing a great job of encouraging people to not just be around people for the sake of them being family. My dad always says, "But I'm your father," when I disagree with him, as if that is some kind of reason for any behavior he has. I have realized that the whole human race is related, and I'm not about to make concessions for anyone on the street just because they say they are part of the human race and biologically related. I love how you tell it like it is. I feel like I'm gaining more clarity and strength each time I watch one of your videos, and I am learning a lot. You do a great job, and I really appreciate your channel. Is there a difference with someone who is emotionally, verbally abusive and someone who is a narcissist, or are emotionally abusive always personality disturbed? Or are emotionally abusive people always personality disturbed? Um, I would say if you're going to be emotionally abusive, it takes a certain amount of personality disorder to do that. You know, if it's emotional abuse is deliberate because it takes planning, it takes calculation, it takes forethought in order to pull it off. So yeah, to me, I find it hard to see where you could have emotional manipulation, emotional abuse without narcissism, without a personality disorder. The one doesn't exist without the other, I don't think. I am the youngest of three children. My brother is the eldest. My sister is the middle child, and I am the third child. My parents have both remarried. I am writing to you to figure out what is going on with my mother. My last interaction with her felt like a blame fest. It was a very confusing conversation. About a week later, she rang me and talked like nothing had happened. I said I wasn't going to just pretend nothing had happened, and we had to talk about it, holding her accountable. I said that she had been rude to me, and she said my name like she was giving me a warning. Oh, I know what that's like. She said that I was the one that had been rude, and then when asked what I had said or done, she wouldn't answer me. She said she was being charitable by forgiving me, but wasn't able to say what it was she apparently was forgiving me for, and then, conveniently, had to leave the conversation. I've noticed a pattern of her never being able to talk about things after they happen and blaming me for them. Well, yeah, I mean, that's very typical. That's when you ask them for a specific and they can't give you one. You did something, but nobody can. But she can't tell you what you did. You just know. You just know. The week before, she had come over, and I asked her not to interrupt me when I was speaking, as she kept doing it, creating tension. Perhaps it was a tactic. I asked her to stop interrupting, and she couldn't seem to handle that. A bit later, she was glaring at me quite obviously, and I said, "Why are you giving me that look?" She said, "Oh, so you think I can read minds now, do you?" sarcastically. I was like, "What?" It's obvious from the look on your face you're mad at me, and she just wouldn't answer the question. She said, "You don't know what I am thinking," which is why I asked. The whole conversation made no sense. She stormed off at the end of the conversation because I got angry at her for not taking me seriously. The whole atmosphere changed. It seemed like she was mocking me and just denying everything. She lied about saying "shut up" 30 seconds after saying it. I got changed into different clothes and said to her, "Does my top look okay?" She said yes, then added in a smirking voice, "For now," as if I wouldn't fit it for long and I was getting fat, which I'm not. She often does weird smirk voice, but then totally denies it. Yeah, your mother, you have a relationship with your mother where she's a jealous friend. This is the jealous friend mom relationship. The the daughter best friend that narcissistic mothers like to create. Your mother is in competition with you. She's probably always been in competition with you your entire life. Okay, the passive aggressiveness, the snarkiness of basically your high school cheerleader. I don't know if they have cheerleaders where you're from, but I'm sure you know what cheerleaders are. Okay, a mean girl. Your mother is a mean girl who's jealous of her own daughter, it seems. Then when I asked her what she meant with the mocking tone, she denied it and said, "Why do I keep constantly accusing her of this?" In a way, as if she's this poor, persecuted person. Her body language is different, like how men are before a fight, puffing their chest out and taking a deep breath in. When I ask her to stop doing something or why she is doing something, she says, "Oh, you think you're perfect, do you?" Like as if I'm implying I'm perfect by having boundaries. I feel like I'm talking normally and calmly, as I have learned not to give them any reason to blame me, and she implies that I'm being unreasonable. About 2 months ago, my sister was looking for a property. When we went to have a look, as soon as she got out of the car, she started bitching about two people about 500 meters away who were minding their own business and getting into their own car. They hadn't even noticed my sister. They haven't even noticed my sister, but she is like, "Oh, I can't live here. There are neighbors from hell." She said it dramatically, and it was starting to storm. She said that they were giving her a horrible look, even though I noticed they hadn't even noticed my sister. She was starting to huff and puff about it. Then I realized I think she doesn't even want to buy the property. She just wants to pretend to my mom so that she can be seen accomplishing the same as what I had. My sister wouldn't barely look at the outside. We were just looking from the outside as we didn't have an appointment and we were just seeing where it was. When I got in the car, I asked her nicely what she thought about it. She said she didn't like it. I asked her what she didn't like about it, as it looked nice from the outside to me and in her price range. Before I even go any further here, let me tell you something. Your sister and your mother are the same person. Your sister's tactics, she learned from your mother, okay? And she's probably worse than your mother, okay? She went off on me like I had said something terrible, and she said, "I don't have to explain myself to you. Stop telling me what to do. I don't have to talk about it if I don't want to." See, this is the next level of your mother's replies to you when you try to put up a boundary. It's the same tactic, okay, one level up. Like I said, she's worse than your mother because now she's taking out family events, planning in order to manipulate people. Okay, she's setting up staged events to do this shit at. I said, "I know you don't have to talk about it, but why are you getting annoyed about it? I'm just interested in what you didn't like about the place, as I didn't think it was an unusual question to ask someone if I'm going house shopping with them and just been making conversation." Then my mom said to me, "Just drop it. She doesn't like this place. She doesn't have to give a reason." See, or something like that. Mom said it like as if I was pressuring her sister and like I was starting a fight and needed to back down. I was just trying to understand how an innocent question had been received so badly. You know what? You need to stop trying to understand these two bitches and understand the only thing these two are doing is jerking your fucking chain. That's what you need to understand. I asked why she thought I was telling her what to do, and she said, as she said, trying to control her. I staying calm, and she said it rudely. My mom heard it all and yet agreed with her and told me to just drop it. What? Did nobody else notice that she just lost her shit over nothing? Even though this type of attitude with my sister has happened a lot and it still shocks me. I'm often in a conversation in shock at a way my sister tries to blame me. Your sister, like I said, your sister is the next level of your mother. Stop trying to convince your mother anything your sister is doing. Your mother's fully aware of what your sister's doing. They're playing off each other's narcissism. You're not going to win this. What do you mean? Of course she can see it. She just doesn't care. Your mom and sister are the same person. When I lived at home, occasionally my sister would offer to give me a lift. Every time she would start a fight and then say she wouldn't take me unless I apologized or backed down. By this time I had missed the bus, so I needed the lift. Once I figured out this pattern, I remember being very polite and not rising to any of the baiting. Seeing as she couldn't find anything, I remember she just said I was being rude and had a tone, even though I didn't want, even when I didn't, because I had been using all my energy not to do that. That's when I started thinking it didn't matter what I said to her. She just would take it how she wanted. Exactly, because from a very early age, all this girl's motivation has been is to mess with you and is to hold you down and to make you subservient to her. So now, where you said she's trying to achieve what you already have, that's burning her. That's just burning her ass. Because she can't now hold a lift and hold the ride over your head. You have more power than she does. That's why she's acting like this. I will start with my father, as I think he's the easiest for me to figure out. I think he might be a religious cerebral narcissist, and if so, get his specialness from being supposedly morally better than others in all other religions or spiritual paths. He is very argumentative and nothing ever gets resolved, just circular arguments. One of the last interactions I've had with him made me see clearly that he rages. I'm 29 and live by myself. He offered to help me put my TV up on the wall for me. I told him where I wanted it, and he said that the TV would be better somewhere else. I told him I thought the reasons he had were good, but that I decided on having it close to the couch, and I told him why. He kept insisting on his way, and I very diplomatically said I appreciated his reasons, but that the decision really was up to me. He wouldn't back down. I wasn't going to fight over my right to put my TV where I wanted. I'm a grown adult in my own place, so I just said, maybe I'll have to think about it and we can do it another time. As I didn't want to outright disagree and get into a fight, but there was no way in hell that I was going to think about this every time I looked at my TV. He threatened that he wasn't going to come back another time and that we just have to do it now. I said, that's fine. I can get someone else to help me if you can't make it. I didn't want to act annoyed, as he would just draw me into the fight further. I would rather pay someone if there was going to be drama. He started to huff and puff, and I felt the rage energy. Maybe he wanted the fight, and when he didn't get it, out came the rage. He started going on about how unreasonable, ungrateful I was being, and my stepmom agreed with him. I wasn't interested in a debate and just let him pack up all the stuff and leave. I was watching it in shock, thinking, is he actually raging because he can't control what I do in my own house? Even though I have seen this behavior before, it seemed clear because it was in my own place. And I knew it was my right to say no. It seemed like control just for the sake of control. It's not like it was going to affect his life where I put it. And you know what? You do see it more clearly when you're in your own place, without a doubt, because, and I've told this story before about the second time I tried to go no contact when this is when my ex-wife was pregnant with Aaron, the fight over the baby furniture that spilled into some kind of weird fight in my own living room. Okay, after I had worked overnight inventory. Okay, I hadn't slept in 24 hours. My father made an excuse to come into my house to finish some trim work because he put in the countertops, which I appreciated and he wanted to do, but he thinks that entitles him to do whatever he wants. I told him not to come in, that I'd be sleeping. He went in there anyway. He woke me up, and I knew he was going to be looking for a fight because I wouldn't give it to them over the baby furniture they were backing out of. Okay? My father picked a fight over not having them over for dinner quick enough. Now, mind you, my ex-wife is pregnant. Okay? I'm working retail in the largest department store in the world. Okay, through Christmas. This is in January, right after Christmas, into inventory. Just worked 24 hours straight through the overnight. Had been up for something like 40 straight hours. And here he is. And when he woke me up, I didn't say anything. I just went in the living room and I started taking the ornaments off the Christmas tree. And that's where it started. I had the same thought. Is he actually, I was standing there in shock as he raged, and I didn't say a word. And he grabbed all his things and stormed out the same way. And that was basically 5 months of hell from that moment till the point Aaron was born. But yeah, you will see it very clearly in your own house when it's a situation like that, where, he's freaking out over where you want to put a television. He did it another time when he asked if I wanted my window fixed. I didn't mean right then. I thought he meant another time. I came back outside and he was hacking off the wood to open up the window, and there was a bit struck. Bits of my window were flying off, so I just asked what he was doing. He wouldn't answer. I asked a few more times. I was initially just curious, but when he wouldn't answer me, I didn't want him thinking that he could just do whatever he wanted to my house and ignore me like he was entitled to do whatever with no regards to my wishes. He started to rage and said, as an angry accusation, "Oh, so you don't trust me?" He would say this a lot as if I have a duty to trust him, and apparently means that he can do whatever and not be accountable. We kept arguing until I just burst into tears, and he still wouldn't tell me what he was doing or back down or stop arguing enough to listen to me, even though I was visibly upset. I initially had just asked to start a conversation. It took a lot of effort to stop him as he wanted to argue, but I kicked up such a fuss and he stopped, but blamed me and raged at me. I was exhausted. It was such a ridiculous drama that a normal person could have resolved in 30 seconds. When I was under their roof, the boundary lines are blurred because it is their house. I remember my stepmom never wanted me to have my bedroom door shut because she said I had to come out to the lounge room and socialize pretty much whenever she was there. I would shut my bedroom door and another door as I hated hearing the TV on so loud, and she was loud as well. My dad would say I wasn't allowed to do this. he also made this rule after she started living with him, as she didn't like me doing this. She thought that if I didn't spend all this time with her, it meant I didn't like her, which was true, but I wasn't about to tell her that. I was 16 at the time. I remember once I went to shut the door to the hallway and he came out and argued with me. I said that I'm allowed to have boundaries, and he said, "You don't need boundaries with your father." We kept arguing and he grabbed my arm when I went to leave to go to my room. I said, "Get your hands off me. This is my body, not yours." He said, "The children belong to the father." He started quoting the Bible and saying that the olden days, Old Testament, that the women and children were classified as property of the father. I was shocked at his stupidity at conflict resolution, but now I realize that is never his agenda. I didn't believe he could really think this way. I remember thinking the way he talked to God was really weird during grace. He would speak to God condescendingly in a fake way that wasn't humble or in awe. I remember him saying that psychologists were new age, which in my family meant evil. He said psychologists were ungodly. I've never read that in the Bible, but now I think that it's because a psychologist would see through his shit pretty quickly. Exactly. That's exactly what it is, and I'm sure whatever church he was in was pushing that psychology is it's just a shield, so they're never exposed. That's all that is. Okay, and it sounds like you had a mother and a stepmother that wanted you to be like a daughter best friend, and a father that has absolutely no boundaries whatsoever and doesn't feel that he should have to answer for anyone or anything he does ever. That his children and his wives are nothing more than property. That's what narcissists always view you. And the reason why he's condescending during grace to God, because he doesn't really believe in God. He believes he's God. Remember, when they talk religion, when they talk God, they're talking about themselves. Whenever there was something he doesn't like, he will bring God into the argument. But no matter what verses you give in response, it won't matter because it's not about doing God's will, I now realize. I remember I was about 27 and we drove past this really beautiful horse. I said, "Wow, what a beautiful horse. I could live in a house." Oh, I'm sorry. What a beautiful house. We drove by this really beautiful house. I said, "Wow, what a beautiful house. I could live in a house like that one day." I don't know what my goddamn. "I could live in a house like that one day." He said, "No, you wouldn't be able to do that because him, wouldn't be able to do that." He immediately went into some Bible verse to put down women. I interrupted and said, "No, don't you dare tell me I can't do this because I'm a woman." Then he just smirked like it was some hilarious joke, so I knew I had got it right about what he was up to. But he didn't say anything. He didn't apologize. He would never apologize for anything and never say thank you either. I don't remember him ever encouraging me, and he would sometimes say that I got my artistic gifts from him, but that was the closest to a compliment. I came over to his house once and was in a happy mood. He walked into me quite hard and jolted me. I knew he felt it because how can you not know you have walked into something? He said, "No, I didn't." I said, "I just felt it." It was the most obvious thing in the world, but he wouldn't agree it happened. He was just smirking. I wanted him to apologize, but you guys got to stop with the apologies, and you're never going to get an apology. You're never going to get an acknowledgement. Okay, so continually trying to break it down and get these apologies, you're not going to get them, ever. So stop trying. I wanted him to apologize, but that seemed too hard for him, and we just started arguing about it. He said, "I don't have to apologize," with a smirk on his face. Then when I got angry, he just blamed me for overreacting and told me to just get along with your father and don't be difficult. He would say that a lot. Arguing seems to energize him. I remember once I decided to make him a cup of tea to be nice. It wasn't something I usually did. I asked him if he wanted a cup of tea. No response. Asked again. No response. Asked again and said, "It's rude when you don't respond to someone." I said, "Dad," firmly. He immediately responded with the answer with a smirk, so I knew he had heard me all along. When you got a smirking narcissist, the smirk is the worst. The smirk is the worst fucking gaslight there is. If you got a narcissist who constantly smirks at you and you're keeping them in your life, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. When I came back with the cup of tea, he didn't acknowledge it in any way or even look at me or even the cup of tea. I said, "Here it is, your cup of tea." No response. I said, "Are you going to say thank you?" I remember having an argument explaining why it's important when someone gives you something you should say thank you. He argued that he didn't have to say thank you. This was one of the stupidest arguments I've ever had. He had a smirk on his face the whole time. What upset me the most is that it seemed intentionally trying to frustrate me, even when he could see I was getting annoyed. Of course, that's what the smirk is all about. So why are you standing there doing anything for him? My father is very religious. Religion infiltrates every conversation with him, and he will lecture family members who have any difference of opinion than his. I think it is a way to shame others as ungodly and also to not allow other opinions. I think it is a way to bait as well. When I was younger, I thought that he just had strong beliefs, but now I think that it is something different. He seems to bring God into every conversation in which he disagrees with me. Is this triangulation using God? Example, when I was about 20 plus, he went over to his place. He asked me if I wanted some steak. I said, "No, Dad. You know I'm a vegetarian. Why do you keep saying that when you know I don't eat meat?" He accused, "Well, you're a vegetarian. Well, why are you a vegetarian then?" I could tell he wanted to argue. I wouldn't tell him, knowing that he would quote Bible verses about why I have no right to be a vegetarian, even though you can find verses that supports meat eaters and non-meat eaters in the Bible. He went on about how I shouldn't be allowed to be a vegetarian because the Bible doesn't agree with it, and on and on. There is no ability to let someone else decide what they think the Bible means, even if you are of the same religion. I am no longer religious now, and he still does it. If I tell him it doesn't apply to me because I am not Christian, then he will just bulldoze over that as if his decision was to make, as if it is his decision to make, and will lecture me about why I should be, trying to get me to do what he wants by quoting what God wants. I think he thinks his thoughts and God's thoughts are the same. I told you that. He does all this because when he talks about God, he's talking about himself. That's why when he does grace, he mocks him. He doesn't mean God, a deity. He means him. I must have said something rude to him when I was a child, probably provoked. I remember his response was that if we lived in the Old Testament times, that parents could stone disobedient children for being rude to them. I don't think he would have hurt me, but it was a really odd thing to say, like a threat to get me to stop being rude. Thankfully, I never felt close to him, as there is no emotional intimacy, and I don't feel like he sees me. His church is very weird. I remember once I went to visit it, was the only time I went. I think it's all about being special now that I read about narcissism, because if he just says he's a Christian, then that doesn't make him feel special enough. As if there are millions of other Christians in the world. But if he says that he is the elite, though, being of the right faith group out of all other Christians, then again, he can feel superior. One time I decided to join another religious group. I was around 22 and still at home. I studied the Bible a lot, I think because I was trying to find out what God really was saying, so he couldn't quote things to me out of context, and to get my own spiritual ideas about the Bible that weren't from him. I think it was my way of breaking free of the spiritual abuse, but I didn't know that was what was happening at the time. I remember the time I saw a website about all the contradictions in the Bible. I have never laughed harder. I was excited to find out it was all nonsense, but that was years later. I went to my mom's computer and saw an email from my dad and stepmom that if I decided to go, they would tell me they would give me a lift and then turn around and drive back home or block my funds from the bank so I couldn't book a flight. My stepmother worked at the bank. I didn't have any accounts with that bank, thankfully, but it scared me knowing she had no problem trying it, especially as I was over the age of 18. She had opened 3 bank accounts in my brother's children's names for them without him or his wife knowing. I don't know why she wanted to do that. She said to put savings away for them. Either way, that made me not trust her. She did it as a way to control them. Money is always a good control. When my mom divorced my dad, she said that she wanted to work on the relationship, but they would have to go to counseling. He refused and just quoted the Bible to say that women aren't allowed to divorce their partners and that in the eyes of God, they were still married. He wanted to take it to the high court, but I think the family court lawyers told him how expensive it was. So he took it to the church elders instead and made up stuff about her. He would say greetings and as an accusation. So, what have you been doing? So, of course, I didn't want to share info. Perhaps that is because narcs don't like intimacy. He would never smile at me or say, "How are you?" I remember being 8 years old and wondering which religion was the right one. I remember thinking it's not safe to think about it here until I grew up, even though they would say, "We can't force you to choose." I knew there would be so much coercion placed on my mind, and I don't have access to the information to make that decision. I know there would be too much psychological pressure to agree, and that would confuse me if I made that decision around them. My 8-year-old self didn't know what psychological abuse was, but I knew enough to protect me by promising myself I would make that decision when I had left home. When he would ring, he would ask how work was. When I said good, he would say, "So where do you work?" I would always answer with, "I'm not telling you because I don't want you turning up there uninvited." It seems like, I have to be honest, it seems like you perpetuate this a lot. It seems like you look for the fight as well here, because this goes on and on and on about every fight, every interaction you have with them. Like, at some point, I got to question, like, why you keep going back and forth with him. He would say, "No, I won't." I would say, "No, you won't, because I'm not telling you." I had this conversation a ridiculously large amount of times, at least 15 times. I wanted him to know it so much that if I ever did turn up, I would know that it wasn't because I had told him and told him so. It was very clear. When I was a child, I thought that maybe I was not assertive enough. This example proves that it doesn't matter how clear you make a boundary, they will want to cross it. So one day I gave him some paper. No, the problem you're having is that you keep addressing the same thing over and over and over again. A boundary only works if you cut it off. You've never created a boundary here because you keep going back and having the fight. The narcissist, what boundary have you put up? You've put up no boundary. 15 times on this fight alone? I mean, is this the third or fourth fight you've already described with this guy that you've had multiple times? What boundaries do you have in your life if you're still talking to this dude? You have no boundaries. You don't get a boundary until there's a consequence. So one day I gave him some papers to give to someone. It was in an envelope, but I forgot that my work address was inside it, as it was for a house that I had to get it to the real estate. Not long after he walks into my work calling out my name. He didn't go to reception and ask if he could sit. Why does any of this surprise you? Why would you have given him anything for you to do at this? Why? Why? Why would you give him and then explain this all to me? If this guy has no respect for your boundaries and then you give him your real estate, why would this surprise you? He didn't go to reception and ask if he could see me. Someone came up to me and said, "Is that your dad? He's calling out your name." I was so annoyed how he turned up, but it also that he thought he had the right to do it in this way. It's your own fault. At this point, it's your own damn fault. It's your own damn fault. I couldn't fight him right there as I was with children and had a baby in my arms, so I felt stuck. I couldn't leave and I couldn't fight. I went up to both of them, stepmom and dad, and said, "You know I asked you not to be here." I could tell from her expression that she knew exactly what I was about to say, and she butted in and said, "Oh, but we had to come because there was a washing machine for sale, and we wanted to get it for you. And there's not going to be a sale for much longer." I managed to get them to go, and I just burst into tears and couldn't understand why I couldn't go back to work for a whole hour because I was so upset. When I did go back, I had to really concentrate as I felt I was about to cry at any moment. After that, I never knew if he would turn up or not. I think he just wanted to prove to me that boundaries have no consequence to him, because he could have just sent me a text or done lots of other things instead of breaking the one boundary that I didn't want him to. After that, I was wondering if he would just turn up. Then why did you give him the packet? See, I don't buy this. I don't buy this. I don't buy this. This guy does this to you 15 times over. How many times? And now you're all surprised and crying at work when he shows up and you handed it to him? You've not set up any boundaries with this guy. Who are you kidding? You've set up nothing. I decided to buy my own place. They wanted me to look at some other places as they thought I could do a better deal than the one I wanted. I eventually decided on the one I originally wanted. I asked my dad what price I should offer. He said, "I don't want you to buy that one." I said, "Well, I know you don't, but that's the one I am going to buy, but I need to get a good price." He said, "I'm not happy about it." He said, "I'm not happy about it," and kept repeating, "But I'm not happy about it," as if he was meant to be deciding factor in my decision making. He couldn't seem to accept that the choice was up to me. He refused to help me at all because it wasn't the house he wanted me to get. He offered to lend me some money if I chose the other one. I didn't want that house or to be in debt to them, so I said no. He wouldn't lend me the money. He wouldn't lend me the money for the other one that I wanted, though. They offered to put a kitchen into my place site, but why are these people up your ass like this? See, you invite these people into your life like this, this is what you're going to get. You've set up no boundaries. What boundary? You're taking them around house hunting with you? What boundary have you set up? You've deluded yourself. You've completely deluded yourself in your entire situation. And you think by retelling the story line by line with quotes, it somehow solidifies your story any better. No, we got your story in the first couple paragraphs. All you're doing is continually proving that you have set up no boundaries in your life. None. None. They offered to put a new kitchen in the place that I bought. They said that they would choose the contractors if they were paying for it, and that I couldn't choose as they were paying for it. We went to the kitchen place, and there was a big argument in the car. My stepmom just agreed with him and told me to stop starting something. I was asking him about what he said, as it had made no sense. Then he said, when you're under my roof, you will abide by my rules. I was 28 years old in their car. I told them I wasn't going to argue with them and that they should let me out of the car. They wouldn't let me out, and I started to feel claustrophobic in the car. When we got there, I was acting like the decisions were all up to me as well. And when we got there, I was acting like the decisions were up to me as well, and wasn't letting my dad be in charge in the conversation, but was treating them all equally and talking to them like an equal. Usually my dad just did the talking, and I backed off, although I couldn't understand why. My dad must have sensed the difference, because I felt his rage and his body language change. He stood too close, like intimidating me, and made me feel very uncomfortable. Then I understood why I always acted that way. I still feel like a little girl around my family. It's like they never want to take me seriously. It's very subtle and very obnoxious all in one. When I got home from being with them in the car, I had some kind of stress response I've never felt before. My heartbeat went up fast. I couldn't relax and felt strong fear. I'd never felt that before. The only way I could calm my body down was to tell myself I would never see them again. I experimented with it. I would say I will never see them again, and then I would say to myself, I won't, and I observed the difference in my biology. After that, I canceled the money, $15,000. It just wasn't worth it. I never wanted to see them again. I thought it would be harder to never have them over if they had just put in the kitchen. So I thanked them for the offer and said I had decided not to put the kitchen in, and that this wasn't inconveniencing them at all, as they would be able to use this money for themselves. And I also mentioned that the choice over my kitchen is mine, in a nice way. They sent me back a horrible text saying that I was ungrateful and trying to guilt trip me. At the end, they said we are not trying to control you, we're trying to help you. That's weird. I never accused them of trying to control me. I just made a choice about my own property. There's never any straight arguments. They knew they couldn't say I have the right to make decisions about my own property, so they just have to guilt trip and tried the shame. They can't play by the rules of arguments. So I sent him a letter after going to a counselor saying I didn't want to see him anymore. I didn't write the reasons, as I knew he wasn't going to hear it, and would probably just say I was doing those things to him. His response was that I was dishonest and not telling the truth, because I wasn't mentioning the reasons why I didn't want to see him. I don't see how he can call someone dishonest for not giving information when they don't have to. He got cancer about a month later. I thought it was a trick, but he really did have a large tumor. I wrote a letter about all the reasons why I was unhappy and tried to not lay blame, but just share how I felt. Afterwards, he just hugged me and said, "You know I love you," and said, "It's okay," like as if he was forgiving me. I was only telling him to give him a chance to talk about it, and admit to it to resolve the problems. No, he never will. What? Clearly, if somebody wants to get you out of their life, they don't know that you love them. There was no talking about it or asking what he had done to hurt me so much. We were in the hospital and he was talking about how the unchristians were going to hell and just bagging them out. It's like he is on verbal loop. He knew that I'm not a Christian and sitting there in the room. Anyway, I was really emotional, not because I love him, but because I realized there may not be no way to ever mend this relationship. Not that I thought there was a relationship worth saving, but because the hope of having the relationship that I wanted might be lost. I think that is probably why. I still don't want a relationship, but I'm glad I went to the hospital and said goodbye because I think it'll be the last time I see him. I have been very low contact for about the last 5 years with them both. I instinctively went graywalk without knowing what it was, giving no info out and acting uninterested in everything. My sister is very odd, but I don't know why. She has no friends. I think of her as an emotional cyclone. Kind of comes in and out of in an emotional way. Nothing can be said to stop it. When my dad was in the hospital doped up on morphine and a few other painkillers, she started an argument because she didn't like the fact that my stepmom and dad shared a phone, which they had done for years. I said to her, now is not the time to argue with him, and certainly not like that. She just got angry at me and stormed off. She does rage as well. She gets angry at everything, which I now understand is about control or not having to be accountable. I don't feel like my sister has ever liked me, but I don't think I have ever done anything to deserve it. When I was little, I couldn't figure out why she didn't like me. I used to sit with my mom on her bed when I was a child and then realized my sister would always want to be there and get my mother's attention onto her instead of me. It's not what I kind of was saying. Your sister became your mother times 100. Times 100. I said that to you at the beginning about your sister. She always seems to want to sabotage my relationship with my mom and would always tell on me by exaggerating things or leaving out what she did if we had an argument. My sister doesn't seem to think for herself, but just goes along with my mom. Even now as an adult, she seems to have strong opinions when she speaks. But she is just parroting my mother. As a young child, I think I was the favorite, but that changed as I got older and wouldn't agree from my mother or sister. I thought my sister was jealous of me, but I heard that she was also jealous of my brother's wife because she had children and a family. She told her boss once when she was working as a receptionist assistant that she had made a big fuss because they asked her to make a cup of tea. Apparently, it was beneath her and it wasn't a part of her job description, so she refused to do it. She can't seem to keep a job. At least twice her positions have been made redundant. I remember as an adult, I went over to meet my family at their house. She still lives at home at 33. I walked in and she said, "What are you doing here?" in a disgusted tone. I said, "What's your problem?" calmly. She said, "Don't talk to me like that," in that tone. I rampaged off to Mom, who took her side, even though I said I hadn't been rude. My mother took her side and wasn't interested in what I had to say and just took my sister's word for it. Here's what I need you to do. This is what I need you to do for yourself, Anonymous. Take the word rude, write it down on a piece of paper, and then wipe your fucking ass with it. Because that's what the word rude it has been so fucking destructive rude this, I'm not rude, you're rude, you're rude, you're rude, like you're a bunch of fun. Who gives a shit? You're grown-ass women at 33, you run into your mom? What are you doing? The woman's clearly jealous of you. You're rude. No, you're rude. I wasn't rude. You're rude. Who cares? This is like the same thing with the boundaries you think you had with your father. Like, this is ridiculous. My sister would always try to be part of any argument my mother would have with me. She would interject and accuse me of things, which really made it really hard to talk with mom. It's hard to talk to two people at once. The way she would say stuff was kind of over the top in these situations. My mother couldn't seem to see what was going on, and when I told my sister to back off or butt out, I was then told I was being rude. My sister would yell and almost be hysterical sometimes, and still wasn't told to back down or wait till my mother and I were finished. I think my sister wanted the attention on herself, and she wanted to drive a wedge between me and my mom and making lots of unsolved arguments. My mom would call me rude when I would tell my sister to mind her own business. It was rude, 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 rude. It's idiocy. This is idiocy. You're a 29-year-old woman? Look at this. Look at this. This is a child's fight that you're spilling out now in detail. It seems so obvious to not let an extra person join the conversation as it just made it harder to resolve, especially as if it had nothing to do with my sister. And it seemed so clear that my sister was causing havoc. Why didn't my mother tell her to stop? Because your sister's 33, you're 29, your mother's probably in her 60s, and the three of you can't figure out, like, why are we doing this? That's why. Until one of you's figured out you need to be the fuck away from each other, this shit'll continue. You could be Virginia, my mother, and one of her sisters. This is the same way my mother and sisters fight. It's the same fucking relationship. Same one. What is it? Who can call each other rude first? The rudeness factor. Like, what are you doing here? Fighting over who was rude to who wasn't rude. The only way you win is not to play the game you've established over and over and over and over again in this letter of why you shouldn't be anywhere near these people. But we'll continue. Your mother didn't tell her to stop because she's an idiot. This would happen constantly. Constantly you're doing this. She would often come into the room screaming if my mom would have an argument and would say, "What are you doing to my mother?" I would say, "It's both our mothers." What kind of response is that? That response is you're only pushing back on her. I mean, do you like this? Is this enjoyable to you? If this happens constantly, then you know what her response is going to be to that. But you keep going and fucking with the stove. You keep you keep making the same mistake over and over. They're like, Why do they let it happen? I don't know. Why do you think? Because you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. You want this to stop, you need to cut them off. You need to cut them off. You think you have boundaries you don't have. You are living in a dream world. You are living in a dream. And just like with your father, you keep having the same fight 15, 20 times over. Same thing with your mom and your sister. Like, what are you doing? You're in constant battle mode. So at some point, I got to ask you, do you find comfort in this, in all this fighting in your life? This emotional manipulation, this emotional shit back and forth. Do you? Because to me, this seems more as you just trying to prove that they're rude. Are you on a rudeness quest still? Because I told you what to do with the rudeness. That word should never come out of your fucking mouth again. That word should be forever banned from your vocabulary, from your life. Because that word is keeping you ensconced in this bullshit. Your quest for rudeness. Narcissistic boundaries, the quest for rudeness. I don't mean to get mad at you, and I'm not mad, but I'm trying to wake you up here, Anonymous. It didn't seem to change the behaviors. That is a really odd thing to say. I don't understand why she would come into the room screaming and my mother wouldn't say anything. You don't understand, really? As I was a teenager and I would have a fight with my mom would always say, well, maybe you should go find somewhere else to live, like as if that was some kind of option for me. I wasn't there by choice. I remember one day my mom and I were having a big fight, although our fights didn't seem to be anything that I can remember. I remember really calmly saying that something back, and when I said it, I stopped caring and wasn't afraid. I think she felt the difference as she slapped me across the face, which she had never done before. I started to feel angry, but I didn't want to hit her back, so I turned to leave to go to my room to calm down. My sister came into the room from the hallway, or her room, not sure. She ran into the room screaming, not with words, just screaming, and said, "What have you done to my mother?" This is a common thing she would say. I don't know why. You just told her, what have you done to my story? Done to my mother's story. I knew she was trying to get me to lose my temper and provoke me, and I just replied calmly that it had nothing to do with her. She was screaming in my face and had a hand on each of the door frames so I couldn't get past. I asked her twice to move out of my way as I wanted to get past, and I knew I had to get away as I was finding it hard to stay calm. She just kept screaming at me. I had no idea what the argument was about, as she had been in the other room the whole time, to my knowledge. My mom was still arguing with me behind me, which I was trying to ignore as I was feeling angry and just needed to get away. The third time I asked, as I moved forward against my sister's arm to go through, but she wouldn't move them. I slapped her in the face, which shocked her enough to let me pass. I don't feel proud of that, but it is important for the rest of the story. I went to my room and heard male voices in the house I didn't recognize. I came out in my nightie and there were two policemen in the kitchen. They said to my mother that she had the option of placing charges, and my mom said that she didn't want to, as she didn't want to give me a record. They left very soon after, and I came into the room, so they didn't get to say my side of the story. I had to speak to a cop on the phone that warned me if I did anything else, they would put me in jail for the night. The accusation was that I had hit my mother. I had done no such thing, but I had slapped my sister. I assumed that it had been my sister who had rung the cops, as she always wanted to get me in trouble, but had never done anything like this before. But I still don't know who rang. Whenever there was a fight with my mom and sister, whenever there was a fight with my mom, my sister would suck up to her by agreeing with whatever she said, and they would just agree together about me. Why they didn't accuse me of hitting my sister, as I wouldn't have been able to deny that. I don't know how someone can be sitting in judgment of someone about to say something they have just done themselves. We had both done the wrong thing, so why did she agree? So why was she agreeing to calling the cops on me? I don't know. You know, you hit her, because if she says you hit her mom and then you say you hit her, that's you admitting you hit her, and the cops got to take you. That's why. Soon after, my mom took me to a counselor so that I would not hold resentment towards her. The counselor was a Christian counselor that worked at the school I was about to start in a few weeks. When I went to bring up what happened, the counselor went to say that this is all in the past and we needed to focus on what kind of relationship I wanted with my mother today. She wanted to know what problems I had to work on for myself, because we can only change ourselves. It felt like my mom had talked to her before, as I felt I wasn't on an even footing of working out the issue evenly between us. I felt more like she looked at me as the naughty teenager. I said, how can we move forward when we can't solve any problems? And what's the point of counseling if we can't resolve the problems that got us there in the first place? The counselor let me tell the story, but the counselor let me tell the story, but the part about her lying to the cops didn't seem to come up. It was more about saying how I felt. My mom said, sorry, but I don't feel like she said why she did it. She wasn't sorry enough to tell the cops she had lied about me, which I didn't get a chance to ask why that wasn't happening. Afterwards, my mom just said, oh well, we just have to deal with it. Let's let it go. My stepdad and I would disagree sometimes, although left alone, we would find a resolution. My mom would jump in and say, stop arguing, and wouldn't let us finish the conversation, even though it was out of hand and we just started talking. She just talks to him rudely, and I stand up for him, and she says, why are you always picking on me? He does what she wants, though, most of the time. What I don't understand is both my sister and mom will say we to mean we both of them against me. They will say it before they have consulted with each other. It's like they can't talk for themselves. Here's a common example. My mother will say in a tone, I will say, what do you mean, or what is wrong? She will say nothing is wrong with that tone. Then will say, I don't like it when you're implying something and don't tell me. Just tell me what is wrong. And then she will say, well, we think you're being rude. And I say, well, how can you talk for my sister when you don't know what she thinks? At what time my sister, of course, will agree anyway. Later on, I disagreed with her and kept telling her I don't like the way she's acting and talking to me. She said, we won't pay for that then. I was going to pay her back, but had borrowed money. I laughed at her and said, I'm already paying for it, and it had already been brought and was on my property. I was shocked that she was willing to go straight to financial threats for simply saying, don't talk to me like that. It reminded me when I was a teenager and I was dependent on her and she would threaten me financially if I disagreed with her. She would say, well, I won't buy you a bus ticket for school if you can't find your own way there. She knew she couldn't not buy a ticket though. She knew I had no ability to get my own way there. She stormed off at the end of the conversation because I got angry at her for not taking me seriously. It seemed like she was mocking me. She denied saying shut up 30 seconds after saying it. I got changed and said to her, does my top look okay? She said yes, and then asked in a smirking voice, for now, as if I wouldn't fit into it for long. But then when I asked her what she meant with the mocking tone, she denied it and said angrily, why do I keep accusing her of this? In a way that if she's a poor persecuted person. Her body language was different, like how men are before. Is this the same from the beginning? Why do I keep accusing her of this? In a way, this is a poor her body language is how men before a fight puffing out their chest and taking a deep. You told the same story twice. When I ask her to stop doing something or why she's doing something, she says sometimes, "Oh, you think you're yeah." You've told this. You told this story at the beginning of the letter. I don't tend to share any information about my life, as I feel it ends up somehow not making me feel good with my mom. She just subtle smirks or implying something and then not wanting to explain themselves sometimes. I gave it another go last year and said that I really loved watching Oprah on YouTube. Next time she sent me a link to a book on Oprah's New Age and how New Age is the devil and pretty much how Oprah is evil and leading people astray. Like why they can't just let me enjoy it and pick out the things they like about it. I remember when I got let go from a job, I had made a few mistakes, but done the best I could. I didn't seem to have the confidence I needed, and as I was shy, and they needed someone a bit more friendly as it was customer service. I told my mom, but said I wasn't ready to talk about it yet, as I had just got home and needed to be able to be by myself to process it for a bit. She rang my previous employer right then and got their story, which I did not deny, then blamed me and said all the reasons they had said, as if I didn't know. So now I don't have any family on Facebook, and I don't want them to have to do anything behind my back. And you think you have boundaries? What job can tell, you're an adult, how could they tell your mother why you got fired? That you could sue them for that. I don't even know if I believe that. No job is going to tell your mother. I don't even know if I can believe that. That's illegal. You can't just tell somebody. I remember when I was younger, my parents didn't have a problem with smacking me, but it was only done in their words as a last resort. My mother would sometimes smack me, but not very often and not very hard. I remember father saying that he would take his belt off to smack me, but I raced down the hallway into my mother's lap, and he couldn't get me if I was on her lap, as if he wasn't going to hit her. Usually he used a wooden spoon. My father would be enraged, and his breathing would change to huffing and puffing. This state would scare me, but didn't make me want to change my behavior. I remember once I was outside and screaming because he had hit me and would make such a fuss over it. He said exasperatedly to my mom, we need to explain why we are doing this and that it's because we love her. They both sat me down and explained that God entrusted me to their care, and that if didn't discipline me, then I would turn into a spoiled brat. And that they had to teach me the right way and not let me get away with things by disciplining. They would talk to me about breaking the will of the child as if somehow a strong-willed child was a terrible thing. My brother is normal, and I have never not got along with him or had any arguments with him. He was easy to live with, and didn't make any drama. He is older and moved out, so I was at home with my sister and mother. I was leaving the country to go on holiday, although I live alone with my mother, wanted to get up at 6 a.m. to drive me to the airport. I didn't really want her but she said she was worried about me going on holiday and wanted to see me off. When we were in the airport gate, she kept asking me, do I have this? Did I pack that? After asking me if I had packed about 5 different things, it was getting annoying as I was 28 at the time and can pack a bag by myself. I said, Mom, can you please stop asking me all these questions? You don't need to worry. I have a credit card and spare cash and all my documents, and I have a copy, and I left a copy with them. I said if I have forgotten anything, I can buy it there easily. She got off and stormed off because I asked her to keep asking me. She was being annoying about the way she was asking me too. Surely this answer would have settled her mind if she was worried about me, or at least would have not created a tantrum. I wasn't about to let this holiday start off with a silly tantrum, so I tried to find her to sort it out. When she came back, she had a scowl on her face. I didn't want to feel like a baby by having my mother nagging me, and I thought I had said it nicely. I feel like I have such cognitive dissonance. I feel like my mom is a good person who keeps doing things that hurt me and then won't talk to me about it or make time to talk about it if she can't at that time. What's going on? Thank you for your help. You're delusional. You're delusional. An hour and 11 minutes of you trying to justify rudeness and having the same fucking retarded arguments you've been having your whole life. You don't have arguments with your mother constantly over and over and over. Your mother's not a good person. Your father's not a good person. Your sister's not a good person. Now, the question you're going to have to ask yourself is, do you really like this arguing, or do you want to do something about it? And the only thing you're going to be able to do about it is go no contact, because these people are toxic, period. You have no boundaries. You have no walls. You have no privacy. You have none of it. You never did. And you've been living in a world of delusion. Your mother is not a good person. Your sister's not a good person. Your father's not a good person. Your stepmother's not a good person. They're not good people. Now, the question is, do you want to continue on your quest for rudeness, or do you want these people out of your life? Because those are your only 2 choices, Anonymous. That's it. That's it. Okay? Over-explain. You told the same story twice. You're so intent in the fight. You basically had more fights with your family in this letter. And that's why it perpetuates. Because you just feed into it and you give them everything they want. And you are just fuel to their fire. The only way you win is to defuel the fire. The only way you win is not to play the game, and that is no contact. So it's either no contact for you or your perpetual quest for rudeness. That's it. So thank you for your contribution, and thank you for your story. Thank you to everybody watching. If you're still here, please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype chat, have a private phone call, private video made, Facebook chat, you'd like to sponsor a video for someone else or just contribute to the channel, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. And if you're still unclear, wait for the final video link to pop up. That'll be the instructional video to walk you through all of that. Please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And please hit the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. This is Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance. Praise Keck.